Right now, we want to take you live out to Washington, D.C., where One America's Emerald Robinson has the latest updates on the president's first State of the Union address. Emerald, will he stick to the prompter or will the president go off script? What have you learned about the planned bullet points of the president's speech?
That's a good question, Rachel. Well, we received talking points from the White House last night as what to expect in the president's speech, and I think we can expect him to stick very closely to the prompter. But of course, with this president, every now and then he does have to go off prompter to add a little bit of his own Trump flavor, if you will. And this brings up another good point, Rachel. Yesterday, you and I talked about the bipartisan aspect of this speech. You asked me if the president would take this opportunity to promote bipartisan goodwill. And via the talking points we received from the White House, that is exactly the tone he plans to take. In fact, it says that the president will use a bipartisan tone and forward-looking tone as part of this address. And that plays into the theme that the White House has chosen for this address, which is building a safe, strong, and proud America. The president plans to speak from his heart, they say, and appeal to American values and patriotism during this speech. And if the theme is any indication, it does seem like he's looking to take this opportunity to bring the country and the Congress together after a tumultuous couple of weeks where we saw the division really play out in the form of a government shutdown with both sides blaming one another. And as we also talked about, Rachel, yesterday, the president does indeed plan to introduce and lay out his infrastructure plan during this speech. And he also is looking to make the case for his immigration plan. Yes, the president took to Twitter last night to blast Democrats for being what he says are obstructionists and accuse them of not really wanting to do a deal on DACA. But according to the talking points of the preview we received from the White House, the president is looking to make an appeal for his immigration plan and the legislative agenda going forward with the immigration and to reiterate those points. So I think, though, that whereas we saw him use a tougher tone on Twitter last night, I think that in this speech, he's going to really play to the bipartisan aspect of immigrants and point out that his plan does have a 12-year pathway to citizenship for nearly 2 million undocumented, undocumented immigrants in the United States. He's also expected to talk about national security in a big way, to promote his plan to beef up the military, and of course, what would be a speech at this point without mentioning Kim Jong-un? He's planned to talk about that continuing issue with North Korea and their nuclear capabilities and how the United States plans to deal with that issue going forward. And of course, he's going to have guests in the crowd that he will be addressing. A little earlier in the show, you mentioned, and I talked about the opioid crisis and how the president and the Congress is looking to combat that. He's going to have some guests who have been directly affected by this growing crisis in the United States. And he's going to talk about how he and his administration plans to go forward in addressing the opioid crisis and trying to combat it. Rachel?
Emerald, all good points. We also spoke earlier this weekend that some Democrats plan to boycott that speech, but isn't that effort working against them at this point? They're already being labeled as obstructionists by the president coming off that government shutdown. How much do you think that will play into his speech?
You know, Rachel, it's according to how much of a bipartisan tone the president achieves with his speech. If he does stick to these talking points, if he does make an appeal for both Democrats and Republicans come together for the good of the country and get something done and show a willingness to work with Democrats, those who are boycotting, John Lewis, Maxine Waters, Frederica Wilson, and a couple others, this might not play so well for them. And this is something else that I learned overnight, Rachel, is that not only is Maxine Waters boycotting the speech, she's doing her own rebuttal on the BET network. So, you know, you have the official rebuttal from Democrats that Congressman Joe Kennedy from Massachusetts is doing, but she plans to do her own in addition to her boycott. So, you know, Democrats are going to have to be a little careful because if the president really achieves a strong appeal for bipartisanship and goodwill going forward in 2018, obstructing might not do so well for them in 2018.
We can use your help. Call your cable provider and kindly demand that One America News is added to your lineup. Call today.